the meantime, let's also talk about where the entire world seems to be now glued to the United States-Iran round 2 of ceasefire talks in Islamabad, and there is still a lot of uncertainty and confusion. On one hand, President Trump insists that he's not under pressure to make a peace deal with Iran, but says that one will be made relatively quickly. On the other hand, Iran has been sending mixed signals as well. However, first up saying that it has no plans for a second roundtable of negotiations. However, as per US reports, that there is already a delegation that is headed by Vice President JD Vance that will be traveling once again to Pakistan. Now, while an Iranian delegation led by their speaker Ghalibaf is also making plans to travel to Islamabad, and in all, the next phase of peace talks between America and Iran, however, still seems uncertain. Let's, in the meantime, also talk about what it is important to note, because in less than 48 hours, President Trump went on from saying that Iran has agreed to everything, including working with the US to remove its enriched uranium or nuclear dust, as he calls, to warning that if Iran does not sign a US-backed deal, then the whole country is getting blown up. Let's take you through exactly when it comes to the threats on part of President Trump that has been, unrelentless as far as now what President Trump says that Iran violated ceasefire agreement, fired bullets at the Strait of Hormuz, and this is coming at a time when there is already a naval blockade in place. Then what he has said, that he says that Iran is helping us unknowingly using $500 million per day, which he calls that it is unsustainable even in the short run. Then he says that several ships are heading to the US, Texas, and Louisiana, and Alaska, and that is Iran that is now turning them around from the Strait of Hormuz. However, he says that we are offering them a very reasonable and a fair deal, and they hope they take it, but no more Mr. Nice Guy. That would be the role that US would be playing, because it is time for Iran killing machine to end, and this is now when it comes to President Trump as far as latest round of warnings are also concerned. But let's, in the meantime, also talk about when it comes to the replies that is now coming in from the Iranian side, because now there are counter threats that are also coming in, and Iran has now hit back at President Trump saying that they can't turn the negotiation table into something that they want an unconditional surrender of Iran, and however it says that it is not ready to accept the terms and conditions under the shadow of threat. So let's talk about what Ghalibaf has to say this time, their speaker, where he says Trump, by imposing a siege and violating ceasefire, seeks to turn this negotiating table as his own imagination into a table of surrender or justify renewed warmongering. We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats, and in the past 2 weeks we are prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield. So, however, saying that they are ready if the war continues, if it resumes after the ceasefire ends, which President Trump, however, says that he is not going to extend. Well, this seems to be the war of words, Mayank, that you seems to be talking about. The tensions also escalate, but the world is actually now looking when these talks will actually happen, when the two sides will be brought to the negotiating table.
So just to analyze the trend which has followed since last almost 20-25 days, because why am I saying it? It has significance. There are 2 points which need to be brought out for the viewers to understand and decipher from the way the things have moved in last 15-20 days. First time when talk about mediation started, Iran was the one which denied, but suddenly a statement came out from the Iran side saying that the conditions which were put forward were not, as per its thoughts or as per its plans. Now, why did it say that? That means they were part of the mediations. Number two, when the first round of talks was supposed to take place in Islamabad, before that also they had said that they won't be participating, but they had sent huge delegation of 70 members. So same was happening, but as far as war of words is concerned, both sides have been saying, Iran said that their fingers are on trigger. US said, which is President Donald Trump himself said, that they'll be bombing Iran to a stone age. Now, these war of words and the trend which has been followed by Iran is denial first, and then they are part of the delegations and mediations. So what you see is actually going by that. I'm not saying that finally the words have come out that they'll be participating, but this has been the trend as far as Iran's statement and war of words have been there. So, and it is quite hopeful, because it's, it's a very high stake talk for both.
Yes.
Because willy-nilly, whatever one can say, ceasefire has been successful in so many ways, except for the posturing which has come to strategic tool. I need to quote that.
Well,
Strategic
nobody,
tool
however,
which
seems
has-
that they want, when it comes to resuming of the war, especially when it comes to the Gulf nations, because they have been hit unprovoked. But as far as these talks are now concerned, we talk about the delegations and who exactly it's going to be represented by. Because when the first round of talks had happened in Islamabad, which failed, Iran was actually led by a 70-member strong delegation that was led by their foreign minister Rakji and also their parliament speaker Ghalibaf. Now, on part of the US side, let's take a look as far as the team is concerned. JD Vance, vice president, who led the first round of talks, he was accompanied by Jared Kushner, the key unofficial policy player, and also Steve Witkoff, as far as when it comes to their envoy is concerned, and Trump's long-running golfing buddy as well. So when it comes to all of these people who have been coming together, because when the first round of talks failed, JD Vance was of the opinion that they have shared the best possible offer to Iran, and it is now up to them to accept or to face consequences. On the Iranian side, however, they have been saying that they will not submit to force, and there has been a lot of mixed signals that have been coming in, especially when it comes to the two teams. However, still it seems uncertain if they are now, dispatched for Islamabad. Islamabad, however, has been making preparations for the second round of deal, but however, it still remains unclear whether all of these leaders would be participating in the second round. Ghalibaf, as well, as far as a parliamentary speaker of Iran, he's also former IRGC when it comes to personnel there, where he has also served as the mayor of Tehran, and he is known as one of Tehran's top diplomats as far as Abbas Araghchi is concerned, who is also the serving foreign minister of Iran. But that seems to be, when it comes to the delegation level, if at all it happens in Islamabad for the second round of time. But Islamabad, however, seems to be preparing. And what another big message that has now come in from President Trump. Let's break that across, because President Trump, however, has been saying that he will not drag the US into a disastrous deal, and he will make sure that Iran accepts its terms and conditions. Well, President Trump says that he will guarantee peace across the world, because saying that, make no mistake, that President Trump will not drag the United States into another disastrous deal with Iran. And now this is coming at a time where both sides, however, have been maintaining that the terms and conditions will be met accordingly. But as far as the White House is concerned, saying that if a deal happens under Trump, it will guarantee peace, security and safety, not just for Israel and the Middle East, but for Europe, America and everywhere else. And this is a statement coming in from President Donald Trump himself. So world peace is something that President Trump, through war, Mayank, seems to be aiming, because that is how he believes that world peace would be achieved.
See, one thing, and US stance has been unflinching, is about nuclear material, which is fissile material in this case. And the way the war of, whatever the statement has been made, he has remained, the president has remained consistent on that, and which is that he has used threat. While the things were moving in a different manner, which is like talks were also going on, the threat has been continuously used by the US president. And if you remember, that started with destroying the bridges and all those things, and he had made that statement that stoning, bombing it to the Stone Age, Iran, which is civilizational aspect, and he had said all those things, and still he remains using those threats. Now, why are we, we need to understand that is actually in high-stake talks, the environment shaping is a kind of a term which is used by every side to eke out the maximum out of the talks. So this keeps happening whenever such high-stakes talks are there. And if it is about peace, see, one thing US has continued is that Iran should not become a nuclear capable. In this case, it is about weaponization, which is military-grade enrichment of uranium. So that has been unflinching right from the beginning, apart from the other two, three, the main goals with which epic fury from the US side has started. And one was bringing down the regime, to destroying the military-industrial complex, including capabilities of Iran to become a nuclear capable nation in terms of weapons. And third was to bring down the capabilities of Iran to help its proxies. We can define these things for our viewers. So Iran has, US has remained consistent as far as nuclear weapon capability destruction of Iran is concerned. So that goes, that continues, and that's why, peaceful word used by the president is also about it, because the threat to peace was a term used by US in so many ways, and that specifically was about nuclear capability of Iran, that they should
Well,
not
was it the
become
nuclear
or
dust or
acquire.
enriched uranium, or was it all about reopening of the Strait of Hormuz? Because there again has been a lot of back and forth. In fact, there have been reports of firing here as well. And the naval blockade on part of US, it still continues to remain imposed, which President Trump says that will not be removed till the time that an actual deal that favors the United States has actually reached with Iran.